Nerds on tap.
And my apologies, folks. We had some technical difficulties during the filming of this episode. There are audio fluctuations throughout this episode. It is not typical of a Nerds on Tap episode, as you can tell if you listen to episode 1 and 2. I'm hopeful that this will never happen again. And my apologies to Jeff Deren that this episode turned out the way it did. But we did not want to go back into the studio because of schedule conflicts. And the content in this episode is so good, I at least had to get it out to you. So here we go. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us at Nerds on Tap for episode 3, where we introduce Jeff Deren to you. Jeff comes from a small town in Iowa and has journeyed the world in some great adventures on his big trip. You get to learn how a small town Iowa boy travels abroad and ends up in the big tech space, specifically ad tech. You know, those ads that you see that pop up in your news feeds in different places and you click and it takes you down a rabbit hole. That's all Jeff and his company, Assertive Yield. Also, we're going to learn about Jeff's exploits as a gator hunter, and we're going to be tasting some interesting brews today, including Dale's Pale Ale, Pils Mafia, SeaQuench Ale, and the world-famous Golden Monkey from Victory Brewing Company. We have some stories to tell about that specific brew. So come join us. Welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Nerds on Tap. I'm your host, Tim Shute, and I couldn't be more excited to embark on this nerdy adventure with all of you. So grab your favorite brew, because things are about to get exciting.
3, 2, 1, go!
Hey everyone, welcome to the third episode of Nerds on Tap. This episode is again sponsored by Digital Boardwalk and Smarter Web. Digital Boardwalk is a nationally recognized managed IT services provider, or MSP, headquartered right here in Pensacola, Florida, providing technology management for businesses across the United States with a strict focus on cybersecurity and compliance. You can check them out at gomodernoffice.com. Also sponsored by Smarter Web, an exclusive partner of Digital Boardwalk, providing data-driven marketing solutions to businesses across the United States to drive more traffic and leads to their business. So check them out at smarterweb.net. Today, we'll be diving into the ever-changing dynamic world of ad tech with today's guest, Mr. Jeff Deren. Jeff grew up in a small town in Iowa and graduated with a marketing and Spanish degree from University of Central Missouri. After school, he worked in IT staffing for 4 years, which is when we met, I believe. And before getting married and embarking on a 2-year backpacking trip through Central and South America and Southeast Asia. After returning from the big trip, quote unquote, he moved to Pensacola for a short time before deciding to pursue an entrepreneurial business development career, helping tech startups scale, specifically in the ad tech space, for the last 7 years. So Jeff and his wife, Erin, are now happily back in Pensacola with their 2 kids. And I am glad because he's been one of my longtime drinking companions. So it's good to have you back in town, Jeff. And it's good to have you here on Nerds on Tap. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. To be here. And yeah, very happy to be back in Pensacola. And we were just talking before we started here that we need to have more beers together. It's been a little too long. So I'm glad to be here to delta a few with you.
Well, we're going to do that in a minute. He already tried to grab one earlier, folks, but I said, no, you got to wait. It'll be queued up. So today we're going to follow the following topics. We're going to start out by looking at your Iowa route to global roots. You get it? Right. I was a poet and I didn't know it. Your big adventure. We'll dive into the AdTech world with Jeff and his company, Assertive Yield. Then we'll get
The face behind the face, the man, the myth, the legend.
in our third segment, Gators, Fishing, and Brews. And that's, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, just got back from a successful gator hunt down in Gainesville. So happy to share that story and some others.
I got to see a video, and we'll hopefully share that out on social along with the release of this episode. So I'm looking forward to that. Then we'll go and we'll reflect on the journey and forward insights of the world of ad tech. So very exciting stuff. And in between, we'll be sampling some amazing brews today. I understand you like any pale ales, sours, and pilsners. So I think we accommodated here to a degree. We went with some brews from North Carolina, New York, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. And we'll finish the show by capping it off with some curated questions to ask Jeff and kind of dig into his brain a little bit.
Sounds great.
You watched episode 1. How do we kick off these shows?
You start drinking beer.
Yeah. Right? Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Suds, take it away. Tell us about our first brew.
All right, our first beer is the Oskar Blues Brewery, North Carolina, the Dale's Pale Ale. It's an American pale ale brewed with European malts and 4 kinds of American hops. Dale's Pale Ale delivers a blast of hops aromas, redolent of citrus and spice, complemented by toasty and sweet malts. This brew has a silky mouthfeel with lingering bitterness, 6.5% ABV.
It's good stuff.
What do you think?
Well,
You've had this before, right?
Yeah, I've had it. And you know why I bought it? Because I love the can. It's simple. It's old school.
It's great.
It's great.
King of the Hill.
Kind of reminds me of like the old PBR days, something like that, but with a little bit more flair. I remember back in the 70s, if you opened our refrigerator, there was always a half of a 6-pack of PBR that my dad would have in there. So definitely brings back some memories. I like the taste. What do you think about it, Tim?
Yeah, I actually really like it, but I've had it before and I think it's a good beer. Yeah.
Is it your go-to beer?
No, but my go-to is what we'll get to later.
All right. Is it the surprise beer today? Or?
Yes.
No. Okay. Cool. So we are going to go from your Iowa roots to global roots. So let's dive into Jeff's upbringing and talk about maybe some of your college memories and kind of dig back into what brought you from Iowa to the rest of the world and introduce Jeff to everywhere in between.
Yeah, so I had an amazing upbringing. My folks were awesome parents, and I'm the youngest of 4. So I, being the youngest, was kind of learning from my siblings what not to do mostly, and also what to do. And really being in small town Iowa, there's not a lot going on. And so football and basketball really consumed my life for about the first 16 years. And then my junior year of high school, we took in a Brazilian exchange student. And he and I became very, very close. I wasn't sure about him at first. He's kind of a chubbier guy, pimply face. I was like, all right, what is this guy all about? Turns out the dude was like a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And could absolutely wail on me.
Nice.
And so I found out the hard way not to mess with him. And then he and I snuck out one day, as high schoolers do, and we knocked back a couple Busch Lights. And this kid would bite open the can to shotgun beers. And I was like, all right, this is the real deal. And so he and I...
Gigantic.
He knows martial arts, and he's pounding down breweries.
Yes.
Sounds like a dangerous man.
Yeah, no, he is a very dangerous man. Damus Joshnies was his name. He's still in touch with him. Great guy. But that kind of sparked my interest in the travel thing. So finished high school, was committed to going to Central Missouri on scholarship to play basketball. And that was the plan. That's what happened. But prior to checking into Central Missouri, I went down to Brazil and stayed with Damus's family for a month. And it was 30 days of having way too much fun on the Brazilian beaches.
Changed your life.
Changed my life.
Cool.
When I got back, I was like, all right, I'm going to study a foreign language. I want to study abroad. I want to do this travel thing. And so I got to Central Missouri, and basketball kind of became
a little bit less of a focus because I was so consumed with the travel thing. So it was fun playing basketball. You know, I was a bench warmer for the most part. I've got, got some playing time here and there, kind of just a token 3-point shooter. We had some success, built some great friendships within the team, and still in touch with a lot of those guys. The camaraderie was obviously, the big highlight, and lifelong friendships came of it. But after my sophomore year, I did a internship in Monterrey, Mexico, and for 2 months, and lived with the family down there. And again, just continued to pour kerosene on my desire to travel and see the world. And then I finished my degree 6 months down in Costa Rica. And that's when I got exposed to kind of the budget travel scene. And I would only had classes from Monday to Wednesday. So every Wednesday night or Thursday morning, I'd take a bus to the beach on, whatever beach in Costa Rica, and stay at a hostel and kind of do
That's a hostel.
yeah, flash in the pan budget travel thing. And the hostel living, the people.
How old were you? Put us in the timeline here.
I would have been 22, 23.
Perfect age to be doing this.
Yeah.
We shared similar stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I back in the day camped, traveled all the way out to not to Brazil or wherever, but moved to California with no destination, no real thought of what was going to happen next in my mind. I remember my dad, I called him. He said, "What are you doing? Are you what job you have lined up?" He was all excited. I said, "No, I'm going out there to be an actor." And he goes, "What? You're going to be a bum?" And I remember that like it was yesterday. And I said, "Dad, I'm going to be the best damn bum out there. I'll tell you right now." But I appreciate that. And years later, me and my dad were sitting out here. We were having an event, all of our customers out here. And he told me how proud he was of me. And I said, "Dad, none of this would ever happen if I didn't move to California." And it wasn't because I became the next Brad Pitt. It was because I met other people that mentored me. So I have a feeling this journey with Jeff is going somewhere that's going to lead into those important mentorships.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as I kind of wrapped up the Costa Rica study abroad, that was my last semester of college altogether. So I was graduated. I got back and I told my parents, I'm going to get a job, because the only thing they bought me when I got back was a suit. And they said, "You need to go find yourself a job." So I got the suit, started interviewing, got into IT staffing, worked with a company called Lotus at the time. I had moved to Kansas City. Kansas City is a great city and loved it there. Still was not a fan of the winters and still had that itch to travel. So ended up meeting my wife, and she hung out with me for a couple of weeks. But I was living in kind of a dumpy apartment. I had bought a brown Lincoln Continental from a funeral home, and I had a twin bed. About 2 weeks into us dating, she goes, "You've got a horrible apartment, you drive an old man's car, and you have a twin bed." She goes, "I don't think you're the type of guy I'm looking for." And I said, "Well, this is all because I'm going to sell all this stuff and I'm going to go travel." And she's like, "Well, even worse." And so I was like, "All right, so be it." And then a couple of weeks later, she came back. She said, "Maybe let's give this a shot." I said, "Okay, if you want to do that, let's go to Costa Rica. Let's do the budget travel thing together. Let's see if you actually want to take this trip with me. And if you do, then we can, really get serious with things." And so she went. We brought some friends. We brought her friends, my friends. She was by far the easiest one. My friends were just a total nightmare. Her friends were, a little more high maintenance. And so she got back and she was like, I want to take the trip, but we need to get married. Done. Let's do it. So we got married, sold all of our stuff, and then we got a one-way.
So we need to get married. So she wasn't going to go unless
she was like, "I am not getting rid of all my stuff."
Doing a good job.
For a spoiled guy, because we'd only been dating at that point for about 10 months or so. And I was like, "That's fine. You're my type of gal."
So me and Kathleen, when we had a long distance relationship, and she lived in Nashville and I was down here, and when I told her, "Hey, move down to Pensacola," and she says, "I can't do that unless we're married." My dad won't approve. And
yeah.
we had that conversation the other day, and she goes, "It worked." It worked.
It did.
It worked for Aaron too.
That's right.
But how you're going to get to know somebody pretty well when you're going to Costa Rica together.
Yeah, you really get to know someone when you travel. And I recommend that for any married couple. Take an extended honeymoon because that will really, you'll know every part of that person when you're living in hostels and on a $15 a day budget, ditching pennies, taking chicken buses and stuff. So,
Now, is she the baby of the family? Is she the only? Okay.
yeah,
So a whole different mindset.
yes.
My wife was the oldest of three. I was the youngest of six. So I'm like the big kid in the house. And I try to get my kids to call me Daddy Fun Bags. They won't do it. They won't do it.
So my big bombshell.
10 of us, right?
Wow.
2 different dads, same mom though, and she had all 10. So me growing up, it literally was like watching one of those like Cheaper by the Dozen movie or something.
It's crazy.
About wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, it was insane. What 24/7? I mean, 10 o'clock at night. There's at least one kid doing something he should be doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's 10 of us. So what are you gonna do?
Are you like a really fast eater now?
Oh yeah. It's like I'm 35 now, and I'm still eating like I'm like starving on some deserted island. Yeah, that's just how
It's funny. I learned how to eat fast in the Navy. And they teach you how to eat in 5 minutes. And I was like, oh. And my wife always picks on me because I eat too fast. And I said, that's the Navy. Let's go. Let's go. Totally do this. So anyway, Jeff, continue on. I want to hear. Let's dig in.
Yeah. So
after the wedding, we one-way ticket into Nicaragua, and we started our adventure there. We were kind of doing some volunteer work along the way to be able to stay at these hostels and not have to pay for our housing because we had about 25 grand saved up, and we're trying to stretch this as far as we can make it. And the original intent was just to stay in Latin America. But as we moved through Central America, we kept meeting all these other travelers, most of them European and Israeli. They would tell us, hey, if you got the chance, you need to get over to Southeast Asia. It's unreal.
So we were in Panama, and we just, on a whim, we're like, you know what? Let's just buy a ticket from Peru to Vietnam. And so we bought that ticket and adjusted our plans accordingly, and we sailed because the Darien Gap from Panama to Colombia, you can't take the land, like go via land, so you have to either fly or sail. So we got on this German guy's catamaran and did a 3 or 4 day sailing trip to Cartagena.
Holy moly.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Went to the San Blas Islands, stayed there for a couple of nights, and then about a day and a half on the open water, pulled into Cartagena. Cartagena is a beautiful city. Then we spent a couple months in Colombia, a few weeks in Ecuador, and then about a month in Peru.
So I'm hearing all these names, these countries, and these places, and all I hear is, oh yeah, that's safety. Oh, what? When you're young, we're invincible, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm all about, oh God, I can't be in that room. I might breathe a germ, but what was the were there precautions, or were you even worried about that? What about your parents? Did they?
Oh, I'm sure.
My parents and Aaron's parents were both freaking out, especially Colombia, because Colombia is kind of in the 90s, post Escobar, is like the murder capital of the world. You know? So, but really, Colombia was one of the most beautiful, pristine, clean countries in Latin America that we went to.
And there was crime like in the cities, but it's really no different than the U.S. It's a lot of petty crime. You leave something, leave a computer on a table and walk away for 30 minutes. It's probably not going to be there when you get back. We heard of some people getting held up at gunpoint or knife point here and there, but it was pretty rare. Nothing ever happened to us. We just tried to stay with the group during the nighttime, and during the daytime, we're not walking in isolated streets or anything like that. And, just being smart, it's kind of common sense smarts, and we didn't have any problems. So, we actually really, really enjoyed Colombia, and that was one of the places that we still talk about going back to.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a beautiful country and quite a surprise. But we had that concern too, and we had asked some other travelers that came from there, and everybody was like, "You're gonna love it. Just go. Don't think about the safety thing. You just gotta go." and they were right. So
That's funny because when I was a kid, we traveled to Germany and we traveled. I got to travel with a ball team. I played baseball growing up all over Europe. Boy Scouts, hiked across Spain, did all kinds of cool stuff. I remember I went to my mom. This was back in the film roll days, and she gave me 3 rolls of film, and she said, "Okay, take some good pictures, Timmy." Timmy. And I think I was 12 or 13. We went to Spain. We hiked. It was amazing. Barcelona and all that. I forget. We hiked all across Spain. And we went to a bullfight. And I passed my camera around to all my friends. We got back, and Mom was so excited to develop all the pictures. And all 3 rolls were of the bullfight. And she was so mad. She's like, "What in the world?" But the beauty of it was I got to see Europe as a kid, and it was something I still treasure today. I took my wife back in 2009. She had never been out of Texas and Connecticut and Tennessee, and it was her first trip to Europe, and it opened her eyes to what the world actually looks like, outside of our country. Yeah. And since then, we traveled quite extensively, mostly in Europe and quite honestly, the United States, because, we always talk about all these countries and adventures and where we've gone, in other countries. But I just got back off a 35-day road trip in an RV all across the national parks in the United States. And there's so much beauty right here in our backyard. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's unreal. And every state kind of has its own unique thing, and regionally there's a lot of culture within the U.S. So
there's not many countries to where you go a few hours over and all of a sudden you're in a completely different experience.
Yeah, and one of your favorite cities, New Orleans, is also one of my favorite cities, and that almost feels like you're in a different country.
Now, is it because of Bourbon Street, or is it because of the kind of the underworld, the darkness of it, the voodoo,
the music,
the French District, music and the food, yes, and the Saints. Go Saints. Big Saints fan. I'm actually going to see here in a couple of weeks. Going to see him play the Bucks. But yeah, New Orleans.
I think it's one of the most unique and fun cities in the U.S. It's something different, and that's just the proof is right there that, you can travel around the U.S. and get such diversity and culture and experiences from city to city.
So the sad part is a lot of people go there just to hit Bourbon Street and party, but if you venture, the Garden District and even into the business districts, Mothers sits in the business district there.
Yep.
Yeah. Or the art, more of the artsy areas in the plantations that surround New Orleans that you can actually tour. There's but the food.
The food's amazing.
We already lined up several restaurants while we're heading to this Saints game that we want to hit while we're down there. Mother's is always on the list for lunch.
You get the debris.
Oh, yeah. So tell Suds about the debris, because Suds, we're actually eating that. I turned him on and he goes, "Mother's, what is that?"
So I've only eaten it once, but the debris is just basically all the scraps that kind of fall off as they're cut the roast beef, and then it just all falls into the au jus container.
And it soaks the bun.
Yeah.
It's totally saturated with this debris. Yeah. It's the most amazing sandwich in the world.
It's incredible.
Wasn't it featured on, it wasn't featured on Diners, Drive-In, Diners and Drive-Ins?
It's definitely been on the Food Channel. I don't know which show, but that's.
Have y'all been to the Red Slipper, Ruby Slipper? One, I think.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually really good.
Heck yeah. Suds, have you been? So are you excited about going to Mother's?
Yes.
I get the debris. There's a lot of options, but the debris is the one.
He's a man of many words. So before we get into our second tasting, it looks like everybody finished their first brew. They were actually kind of weakly poured today, Suds. They should have been to the rim, but let's talk about what brought you back. Because that's going to lead us into our second segment, which is diving into the AdTech world with Assertive Yield. What brought you back? What brought you back
here, and what brought you back into tech?
Yeah, so we came back. We were in Asia for about a year and came back, and we were trying to figure out where exactly we wanted to land. And we knew we didn't want it to be the Midwest. So we were just sick of the winter. Nothing against the Midwest. We love the Midwest and all the people there, but Aaron and I aren't really cold weather folks. And so
she actually had a half brother who lived in Pensacola for about 16 years. He had since moved up to Fairbanks, Alaska, the opposite side of the U.S. And I have a brother who was a naval aviator, a pilot, actually flew with the Blue Angels. And so he was in Pensacola. And so we were both familiar with it. And we were looking at Florida because we love the beach. And we both knew Pensacola. So we said, all right, let's pack our stuff up. Let's just drive to Pensacola and find a job. And so that's what we did.
So for anybody listening that's not from Pensacola, I want to say I've been to most of the beaches in this world, and Pensacola sand and beach always drew me back. What say you?
Yeah, you've been a lot of beaches. So I've always thought the same. I was like, man, this is one of the best, at least in the States, right? And I've been like Canada, England, whatever, but that's not really a good comparison point. But I would love to hear from you.
Now, the phosphors that used to be in the sand pre-many hurricanes, I know they had to bring in a lot of sand from elsewhere and redump it out here. There used to be all these, I used to come out to this beach when I was younger. When I was a kid, I would travel down here because my sister lived down here, and I would go out to the beach. It was just all 50s styles beach houses. You could drive out towards Navarre and sit with a 6-pack of good brew. And all it was sand dunes, and there were phosphors in the sand. So the moon would strike down on the sand, and it would just glisten all the way down the beach. Wow. And I do miss that, but talk about the beach for a minute.
Well, there, I just wanted to point. There are spots where you can go.
And I can point you to them. Especially go Pensacola Beach, where they have all the restaurants on the boardwalk right there. If you go to that sand, it's all still up in there, just so you know.
Okay, nice.
Anyways.
I don't go to that side, so I wouldn't know. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, from a beach standpoint, it kind of depends what you're looking for. But Pensacola is actually, obviously a world-class beach. It's up there when it comes to swimming and fishing and lounging and, just enjoying the beach. Some of the Pacific beaches when you go through Latin America are really incredible, but they back up to mountains and rocks and there's great surf. And then you find these little pockets, these bays that are flat and pristine. And so those are really neat. And some of those towns that we were in, there was, nothing. It's just like a dirt road and guys are still riding horses and horse carts and ox carts.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's just incredible. It's untouched,
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, those are really neat. And then Southeast Asia, when you go down to Bali and we were on the Gili Islands in Lombok, which is the island east of Bali. I mean, that's got 100-foot clarity and the water's just incredible and the reefs are incredible. But, those are isolated still, especially in Lombok. It was still pretty isolated, but it's quickly changing. I mean, Bali's just loaded with tourism, and I've heard a lot of people complaining about trash in the water and stuff like that. And that's one thing that I really like about Pensacola. It kind of takes pride in the cleanliness. Mm-hmm. Tries to control the construction, doesn't want it to be overcrowded, and I think that's really important. Yeah, especially if you want to preserve.
Well, it's a lot more crowded than it was when I was a kid because you could go out there and you could look for miles and it wouldn't be a soul. Now it's the tourist spot.
Did they cap the amount of high-rise development though? I've heard that
compared to what Panama City has done, yes, but I worry that it's only a matter of time before Pensacola gets sucked into outside development. Let's hope not. And I think Pensacola Beach Authority has good control over that. I do know that when you buy a house out there, you're actually leasing the land.
I've heard that.
So it's an interesting, which is, there's pros and cons, obviously, for the homeowners. And that's not what today's segment's about. I don't want to get into it, but that's good for another show right there. So let's get back on track. Let's talk about, beach was one of the things, beach heat, two of the things that brought you back down here.
Family connections. and then just had to good fortune to land a good job with the system.
That was the job that I was working when we met.
Yeah.
They were out of DC and top secret cleared as a company, and so they were helping staff a lot of the DoD and DHS projects, and I really found that
government contracting world fascinating, and so that spurred a lot of interest. But the entire time as I was on the road, I was seeing these, digital nomads and people that were location independent and working for these tech startups. I'm hearing about this, and I thought, I really want to do that. And I've kind of had my fill of IT staffing. So I
ended up getting a job offer with a group out of Cambridge, Massachusetts, some guys from MIT and Harvard, and they were launching a travel doctor appointment setting platform, similar to ZocDoc, but it was specifically for travelers. And they wanted me to go open up the Canadian market. And I said yes. Once again, we quit the jobs. We sold the stuff.
And I flew up to Montreal. I was there for about 6 weeks and launched that market, and then went over to Vancouver. Aaron met me in Vancouver. We were there for about 6 weeks. And then they were like, we're out of money. We got to close up shop.
Oh, my gosh. When you were, this is a little off subject, but when you were in Vancouver, did you stay in Vancouver? Did you venture over to the island, Gibsons, and those areas?
Made it to Vancouver Island. Didn't do a ton of exploring. We did some hiking north of Vancouver, and actually had some friends who taught with us in Thailand who lived in Vancouver. And so we just walked into this whole group of friends. They took us around, showed us all the local places. It was a lot of fun. So, but that, I don't regret it because, even though it was a short-lived stint as my first run in the startup world, it got my foot in the door. And then I got a job while I was in Vancouver to launch the state of Florida for a patient identification startup that's using biometrics to identify patients in hospitals. And I took that job. We moved to St. Petersburg, Florida, and kind of fell into a big group of friends down there, and ended up staying in St. Petersburg for about 6 years until the kids came along and COVID hit. And we didn't have any family or grandparent support, and Aaron's parents had since moved to Pensacola. So we said, all right, well, maybe it's time to go back to Pensacola. We always knew we wanted to. We just wanted to wait till we had kids because we felt like Pensacola is a great place to raise a family. And so that was a pretty easy decision. We sold the house in St. Pete and came back here, and I kind of skipped a part. We did move to Nicaragua for a year down there. And then when I got back from Nicaragua, we went back to St. Pete, and that's when I landed into AdTech. And so fell into AdTech, started working with a company out of Sarasota called Rev Content. And that's what launched the AdTech career, and have loved the industry, loved the people in it. It's a fascinating industry. So
I'm excited to dive into that world. We've got to taste another beer before we get into that part. I am glad you're back, and I know we've only hooked up once since you've been back. We had a beer together.
Yeah.
I'd like to do it more. The interesting thing that kept me from going out a lot was our kids were at that age. They were toddlers, on kind of like what you're dealing with now. So I don't know how you get now, but ours are old enough now where they can stay home for short stints, an hour or 2 hours.
Yep.
So I see a little bit of beer meetups in our near future. So I'm excited about that.
yeah, no, absolutely.
And I apologize, I haven't been more accessible, but I'm ready to, get out there, and you need to get me out to those Thursday meetings. Suds, take it away. I want to hear about beer number 2.
All right, beer number 2. It's from the Thin Man Brewery in Buffalo, New York. It's a Pils Mafia. It combines German Pilsner malt and traditional German hops in a crisp, easy-drinking lager. A traditional example of a drinkable beer that tastes like beer.
It's good. It tastes like beer. That is a very drinkable.
And it tastes like beer. So I would hate to drink a beer that doesn't taste like beer.
I've drank beers that don't taste like beer.
Well, we have a show coming up, Women in Tech, and they want me to have wine on the show. And there's been a little bit of an argument about it. So I may have to find a beer that looks like wine and then tell them it's beer afterwards. But
You might be able to find like a porter or something. But
maybe so. So we're gonna hop into segment 2, and we're gonna talk about Jeff's journey into the ad tech space with Assertive Yield and what their role is in the
base and how they've become a big player here. So, Jeff, tell me
about ad tech as a genre in the business world. Tell me about ad tech. Tell the audience about what ad tech is, what it means, and how Assertive Yield has been forward thinking charge of in that industry.
Yeah, so AdTech is kind of the sister of MarTech, AdTech being advertising technology and MarTech being marketing technology. AdTech, at least within my realm, deals more with like editorial news sites. So you have anywhere from the Fox and CNNs to ESPN to Barstool Sports, anybody that's creating content, putting it on a website and monetizing that website using programmatic ads and direct sales ads. There's an enormous amount of technology on the back end of those websites, and it's a fascinating ecosystem that's completely blown my mind in terms of how complex the ecosystem is and how much technology is driving the monetization efforts for these websites. So
this is different, and just to kind of clarify, this is different than just signing up with
Google AdWords and having, Google do some ad campaigns on your behalf that's all automated. What are the similarities and what are the differences?
Yeah, so clarify.
Yeah, there's a lot of automation, and there's a lot of similarities. And you're as an advertiser, you're bidding, and there's CPCs, and you're spending money to get your placement where you want it. But on our side, it's a little bit more of the programmatic thing. So that is also automated. It's an automated real-time auction. And some of the more fascinating elements of it is when you go to a website and you have all those ads that nobody likes to see that pop up, and they pop up really fast.
All of those ads that are populating and being served to you are happening because of a real-time auction that's taking place in milliseconds. And you've got a whole bunch of advertisers, basically bidding on those ad units in real time. And the amount of brain power it took to put that all together and make those ads load and be able to chase people around the internet and get ads that are relevant to them so they engage in those and are meaningful to the advertiser. It's really fascinating how the technology works. And I learn something every day about the technology that supports all of this. So it's
so these ads,
and this is kind of an ad-libbed question here because I want to dive more into that. So these ads aren't just ads for businesses per se. When I refer to
businesses, I mean the small businesses, medium-sized businesses, the enterprise like a Google or Apple or whoever. These are ads that are being generated within a feed, right? Or within a news site that you might be reading that may not be relevant specifically to the news site, but it is news about something else. Is that right?
It's relevant to the user, not to the news site.
Okay.
So
you could be on ESPN and you're getting a steel chainsaw ad that has nothing to do with sports, but you may have looked at a steel
website at one point, and then they got, they understand that with cookies, and then they do some retargeting and chase you around. And so those ads, that's why those ads just kind of follow you from site to site.
So that explains why if I have to log on to my wife's machine, all I'm seeing is shoes and dresses.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
So I got a question. Like, I'm familiar with Google AdSense only because I've dealt with YouTube for ages at this point. But I'm specifically choosing what I want to be advertised, as is any of the users that are using Google AdSense. But what you're talking about is a whole different tech of just basically advertising to the user based off of what they previously searched and what they previously viewed. And that, like, is Google AdSense, anything about them integrating that, or is it always still just a separate user themselves picking what they want?
Google has an ad exchange where this auction takes place, and Google Ad Manager. So that kind of sits out of AdSense, I believe.
But Google drives this ecosystem, right?
Google is one of the main players. Amazon,
Microsoft, and Amazon.
Yeah. So, and then you have these DSPs, which are like on the demand side, that's the advertisers. And you can think, so there's SSPs and DSPs, and then there's the auction in between.
Right.
And so the SSPs are the supply side. That's basically, look at it as like a real estate agent
For these websites, and the websites have property, real estate on their site, which is an ad unit that they want to sell to advertisers.
Okay.
The DSPs work with all kinds of different advertisers, and they help facilitate these, targeted campaigns to hit the end user. And they're willing, they go into this auction, and the DSP acts as like a shopping assistant or buying assistant and says, okay, when this user hits this page, it's going to see this ad unit, and we're willing to bid 10 cents for that ad to populate. That real-time auction happens. The highest bidder wins that ad, and then that ad populates.
Makes sense.
So Assertive Yield, what are you, a DSP?
So we sit on more on the publisher side. So we help publishers understand it's a total revenue management platform. And we help publishers understand what ads are filling, what SSPs are, winning, where the revenue's coming from. And then we also we have a wrapper product, which is basically the auctioneer that sits in the middle and tries to connect the dots and optimize that supply path to, it's called Assertive Yield because the whole goal is to squeeze out as much yield, as much revenue as possible.
No, that's a great name.
We've got a number of different tools that are all kind of packaged in to one product suite, and it's one holistic solution for publishers as from a business intelligence standpoint, from automated price flooring. So you can set floors on how low you'll go for an ad to fill. And then we've got a whole bunch of neat features in terms of alerts and errors. If bugs are happening and are causing revenue loss, we can identify that immediately, alert the publisher. They can get in there, they can fix it, so there's minimal revenue loss. So it's basically a product suite that allows publishers
Their business side, their ad ops team, their editorial team, their dev team, their sales team. There's business intelligence for every department within a publisher. And they can all kind of sit in that same platform and understand what's happening, what's working, and what kind of strategic changes they can make on their end to squeeze out more revenue. So
That's great. So I've seen a lot of, third party, here as a business, we use a lot of third party platforms, and I've seen a lot of third party data driven, companies for marketing automation and these different things. What, as far as revenue, attribution analytics involved with Assertive Yield, what makes it unique, and what makes Assertive Yield's kind of stance with that piece? What makes you guys unique?
yeah, so I found out about Assertive Yield. I just joined there back in June. I've only been there for about 3 months, but I've been working with them for about 1.5 years. With my old job was at a company called AdRiser. And we figured out that Assertive Yield was very unique because AdRiser had a similar product, but about 80% of our clients, when it was all said and done, were using Assertive Yield for their revenue information and revenue reporting.
And so the uniqueness is, one, it's real-time reporting. A lot of publishers are getting reports from the day before. Yeah. We can provide real-time revenue analytics like within the minute. So it's very real-time, hyper granular analytics. You can look down to the article level, the author level, the various ad units. We have like 300 different data points that you can slice and dice, and nobody has that level of granularity in the industry with that type of real-time reporting.
So who is your customer? Who is your ideal customer for Assertive Yield? Is it enterprise? Is it the small to medium business? Is it?
So when Assertive Yield went to market, they quickly gobbled up all of the what's called content arbitrage publishers.
These are the guys that are running the ads that sit below your article that are like 50 Woodstock photos you've never seen before. Those are arbitrage publishers.
I think I viewed that.
Yeah. So
And you guys got paid when I looked at that, right?
yeah, the art pubs, they make a lot of money. They're highly sophisticated publishers. A lot of those guys are actually out of Tel Aviv.
Or the child stars from
Child stars.
Oh gosh.
Stores closing, stores you didn't know were closed in 2023.
What comes up with those ideas?
Well, you want evergreen content. You'll notice it's all listicle content. That's why it's always 25, 50, whatever. And the idea behind that is to maximize page views. And so, you click on that, you hit the article, and then you'll have that giant next button.
Yeah.
And because they want you to click through all those different items in the list, because every time that happens, those ads refresh and they're making money off every refresh.
But the interesting thing is where that next button is located is usually next to something else that you can accidentally click when you click it. Is that on purpose?
It's kind of on purpose, but Google's cracked down on that. And so a lot of guys are getting away from that. But yes, that was kind of the old school way of doing it. Was
That happened to me.
yeah, I think it's happening all the time.
I got targeted to for something I knew I was clicking on. So
And this is a very basic question. I'm sure it works this way, but you view it, there's some revenue. You click it, there's obviously way more. Where does it end? Does it end with the click? Or can the revenue go even further based on a purchase?
Well, I think it goes down a rabbit hole, right? Because they want you to, every time you click that next button, and I'm guessing here, but I imagine you guys get paid every time you click the next, you're gathering data during the process, right?
Yeah, you're getting the user data so you can retarget, high value users that really sink into those articles.
I guess I'm curious if the purchase itself matters.
Yeah, the purchase does matter because that's your cost per click. And so a lot of times you're spending 15 to 20 cents on a click. That charge goes to the publisher as the the publisher is the advertiser. So it's getting charged 15 cents. Well, now it needs to make 15 cents on that user's session. So a lot of times what we saw in my AdRiser days, if they click through about the 12th or 13th slide, that's about the break even point. They get to the 20th slide, now you're making, 20% margin. And so these content arbitrage publishers are spending millions of dollars a month, but they're doing it at 10 to 20% margins. Back in the day, they were doing it like 40 to 50% margins. So they're essentially day trading internet traffic and using display ads to monetize the traffic. So
that is amazing. So Assertive Yield. So how long has Assertive Yield been around? And just give me a brief introduction of how it got started.
Yeah, it's been around for about 4 years, and it started. This guy Nils is the founder, and he's a absolute genius. He's only 30 years old. He's over in the Netherlands. He's an engineer.
Did you meet him on one of your trips by accident?
No, I didn't. I just met him through when we started working with him. I reached out to him. I said, everybody I'm talking to is saying they're using Assertive Yield, so I got to see what this is all about.
Yeah.
And it made sense because the arbitrage publishers specifically need that hyper granular data to make decisions on where they're spending these millions of dollars and how they're spending these millions of dollars to make sure that they're backing that out profitably. And Nils had created a product that was perfect for the arbitrage publishers. I was working at an agency that basically managed the campaigns for arbitrage publishers. And so it was a nice strategic partnership that we had. But he was actually like a gamer and started a couple blogs around gaming. And so he was a publisher himself, and he realized nobody is providing really good revenue attribution data in real time.
The gamers rule the world.
Yeah, well, Nils is one of the smartest fellows in ad tech. I can tell you that. I'm just extremely impressed by
So he blew you away
Yeah.
and brought you in.
Yeah, so AdRiser was acquired, which was great, and then the parent company kind of ran it into the ground, and I saw the writing on the wall, so I reached out to Assertive Yield. It's like, I love what you guys are doing. I knew the CRO, and And so he was like, well, we'll bring you on board. So it's a really easy transition. And it's a team within the ad tech space that I think has one of the best reputations and probably the highest likelihood to, scale and potentially get acquired or, expand. Well, I don't know. The opportunities are endless right now, but the trajectory that Assertive Yield's on is really exciting.
So every time I feel the need to click on one of those go back ads, I need to call you and go, dude, what are you doing?
No, that is not us anymore. That used to be me.
Okay, that's right.
But
All right.
Assertive Yield is just the technology. We are simply a SaaS platform that's providing technology that allows publishers to make more strategic decisions and drive more revenue.
So let's staying on the ad tech space and staying on with Assertive Yield. I want to ask you a couple more questions, and then we'll do another tasting, and then go into some of your more fun. It's just as fun as the ad tech space, right? Gator wrestling and beer drinking and right. While you're out there, I'm sure you're thinking about ad tech. The impact of AI on modern ad tech and Assertive Yield's forefront role in it. Tell me.
Yeah, so a lot of ad ops are still done behind the scenes manually. There's ad ops professionals who are managing the day-to-day, turning the dials behind the scenes, setting the price floors, looking for bugs, fixing bugs. They're just kind of hairs on fire all the time, trying to make sure that things are running smoothly. And AI and machine learning, we've got a lot of machine learning under the hood that really automates that process. But the nice thing about it is there's other players in the game that kind of take over and almost take the jobs of those ad ops professionals. What Assertive Yield does is provide them tools to just make their jobs easier. We're not necessarily trying to just completely take over, because we do think that there still needs to be a team there. There's always that human element that makes things better. And a lot of the publishing world is still a little behind the times. I don't think most of the leadership in the publishing world would just turn it over to AI. And
so we want to give these folks the tools to really streamline their workflow, do their job to the best of their ability, get them promoted, and we can continue developing that AI and machine learning to help automate these processes and workflows. But it's going to impact a lot of things in the digital media world, and we're seeing it with like ChatGPT and content creation and stuff like that. So
we're using it.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how it influences like the editorial news industry, because editorial teams are pretty proud about their work and they want to maintain their journalistic integrity and all that stuff. But
ChatGPT can't, have you using ChatGPT?
Oh, yeah. Just write an article or write a paper for you. It's repetitive.
Yeah.
It uses keywords and machine learning and all of that stuff. And what it creates is great to template out what you actually want to say.
Exactly.
So it gets your brain started, but it doesn't replace it. Not currently, at least.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of the near future editorial use cases for it will be just that. Like we'll kind of get a template, but we're still going to need editors to go in there, put a human voice behind it, make sure that it doesn't sound completely robotic like it typically does now.
Yeah. So
the state of digital media is really kind of in a wild transition, and it has been since the dawn of the internet. These publishing companies are just always trying to play catch up, and now you throw the AI into the mix, and it's like, oh man, you gotta
amplifies what they need to, what they're doing and where they need to go with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then, on top of all that, then you've got all the political discourse and the disinformation and all of that they're trying to sort through. So it's a really interesting industry, and it's a hot topic. Everybody talks about media and media bias and legacy media and the new media and all this,
and being right part of it and understanding how these businesses operate is really kind of neat. So I'm going down to a conference to actually fly out tomorrow, and we'll be down there with all the big media companies, and it's out of Miami, and it's just neat to have conversations with these guys
and understand what the news world is doing behind the scenes. So
I have a very big question I was just thinking about. You're talking about all these kids. Well, everything is shifting and has been for a while, obviously. Video, podcasting, all of this. People aren't going to as many articles now on websites as they were even a few years ago. So what can be done with what y'all are doing to sort of combat that?
Yeah, it's a major challenge for a lot of media companies because I mean, a lot of the population is getting their news from Facebook and TikTok and Instagram. And so I think
it's all real, right?
I mean, when it comes from a reputable source, I would make sure you're looking at the source. But they can still monetize a lot of that stuff. You know, they can monetize on YouTube. I think a lot of short form content will start to be king, and the long form content from like a written and video standpoint will be kind of less and less relevant, or at least less and less leverage to monetize.
I'm guessing maybe you have to make more video ad to combat the video consumption.
Yeah, the CTV space is just absolutely exploding. So all of these conferences that we go to, you know, CTV is always a hot button issue because everybody's trying to figure it out. And it's still kind of the Wild West. And podcasting, I think, is another one.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of...
There's trillions of people. I mean, look at us.
Yeah.
This is episode 3, and it should have been started years ago. But I don't know if that's going to take off.
Yeah.
Right?
Now here we are.
But we're drinking beer on it, so it doesn't matter. That's the reason to drink beer.
That's right.
Before we get into the next beer, and you're caught up now. Before we get into the next beer, I've got one final question. So you've been in the AdTech space, I gather, from our conversation, about 7 years now.
Yeah, 7-8 years.
So 7-8 years. Tell me about your challenges that you've run into as you kind of went through into the industry, into the space, especially with Assertive Yield. I mean, I'm sure there's been challenges along the way. Tell me what that is. Let's try to keep it fairly short and just talk about that because you're between me and the next beer.
Yeah. So, well, simply put, I came into Assertive Yield thinking I know exactly what their product does. Man, did I underestimate that.
It is so complex and so impressive. And sometimes to a fault because some of the publishers that we presented to, they're like, wow, that is really cool, but we don't need all that. So we're actually simplifying based on the use case, the dashboards and everything, because publishers
They're breaking it apart.
Yeah, we're making it so it's really consumable for the end user, and there's not a major learning curve.
So are you part of that development?
I don't do the actual development.
Right.
We sit in, when we demo, we say, okay, what do you need for your dashboard? What metrics are really important to you? How do you want to use this? Because the complexity of the product is such that you can apply it to so many different use cases, and every publisher has their own, issues that they're trying to solve. And what we bring to the table is something that can solve most of those issues if it's used properly. And so we're just trying to make sure that we deliver it on a plate perfectly to where they can take it and run with it with minimal learning curve. And so for me, the biggest challenge was wrapping my head around the entire product because it is so complex, and it's really impressive what they've done.
And you're still learning, right? I mean, I'm in the MSP space. We're learning constantly because there's always a challenge. There's always something new with the bad actors, attacking American businesses, and we've got to get ahead of it. And, it's constant combat.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always evolving. Our product is already very complex, and it's, Nils and the team of engineers are not slowing down. They're continuing to innovate and build. And so once you think you kind of got it, they're like, we got some more stuff coming. Right. So it's great to be a part of a team like that because innovation is really key. And, obviously the entire tech world, but AdTech in particular is hyper competitive, and there's a lot of smart cookies in the space. And so, our team of engineers is in there to play ball, and they're definitely competing.
I kind of like that the AdTech space is as complicated as it is, because when we're competing against other companies, I don't care what small business or what business medium, it doesn't matter what size. When you're competing, if it was easy as clicking one button and going, put me out there, kind of like it was in the old days when you called the yellow pages and said, I want a full page ad,
Yeah.
not a quarter page. You knew you could beat them. It's a little different in this space. So it actually lets the small guys compete in a big guys space. So
Yeah, it's
we're
a
out.
great industry for the startup space. I mean, you got, 2 or 3 really smart guys or gals who know the space and know how to develop. They can put together a product that can quickly scale.
So that product could be built around Nerds on Tap and make us the biggest podcast in the world.
Just got to find the right devs.
All right. Well, let's find the right beer here out of these 4 beers. We are going to hit the next beer, and then we're going to dive into Jeff's personal passions of gator hunting, fishing, and what we're here for today. Brews.
Suds, take it away.
All right, our next beer is the Dogfish Head SeaQuench Ale. Dogfish Head is a brewery out of Delaware. SeaQuench Ale is a session sour mashup of a crisp Kolsch, a salty Gose, and a tart Berliner Weisse brewed in sequence with black lime, sour lime juice, and sea salt.
Oh, cheers.
Try to cheers here, man.
Don't take my beer.
I thought you were giving it to me. You just said it's not your favorite.
Sorry, Suds. No, you said you take my beer from me. He wanted to drink before we started, and now he's trying to steal my beer away.
Hey, just to keep the show honest, this is the worst beer I think we've had on here.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. But the reason we have this is a sour, right?
Yeah.
So the reason we have this on here is because it's one of your favorite types. Why?
To me, a sour is a good hot weather beer. It's not something I drink in the wintertime,
Okay.
but it's got, obviously it's sour, so it's got that citrusy element. And I feel like it's a little bit more refreshing than like an IPA when you're sitting out in 90-degree weather. So
What is your go-to on the sours?
I actually used to drink this fairly regularly. It was kind of my boat beer. I haven't had this in about 2 or 3 years though.
What's your Adtech beer?
My Adtech beer.
I hope there's not one,
No, but my favorite is sour beers. That's also my favorite. But I don't know. I like the Sour Monkey's one of my favorites. But there's a lot, like a cherry sour is amazing. I love those. But I don't know. This is just lime, I guess. I'm not liking the lime. So.
Yeah, I think this one is overly. I mean, are they all this sour? 'Cause I don't have a go-to.
Kind of like the new IPAs. Everybody's putting out 2 or 3 at their brewery. You go there.
No, I love it.
Yeah, everybody has them.
I don't typically buy them from the store, but I always, I enjoy sampling them when I go to a brewery. So,
I used to be a hardcore IPA guy. You knew that. And as I got older, because it's been a while, right? We were hanging around, down in pints a decade ago. You realize it's been that long?
that's crazy.
Yeah. And I can hang to a degree. Why are you laughing? I can't hang.
Some nights you could hang.
But all right, so let's get into the next segment, and we'll slowly sip this sour. But let's talk about your hobbies. You've got a unique hobby of gator hunting, and then we'll go into fishing. But so, what is at the top of your hobby list? Is it finding the right gator to catch, or is it catching a redfish in the bay, or going out offshore and catching the big fish?
What do you like to do?
I think, really at the end of the day, it's just an excuse to get out on a boat. So even boating would be up there. But I'd probably put fishing's, more often than not when I'm on a boat and looking to catch something. It's not a gator, it's a fish. So I'd put fishing up there, and I try to get out. And that was another big draw to Pensacola. I mean, it's world-class fishing here. So
Yeah.
Love getting out of the water here and chasing after fish. But when we got back from Thailand, we went down to Gainesville and visited my cousins down there, and he pulled out some gator skins, and I was like, "Where'd you get those?" And that's what I
kill them. It's like,
And how long ago was this?
that would have been 2013.
Okay.
And
he was like, "If you want to do it, you just got to put in for a tag and come on down." So I put in for a tag and went down there, and we got a 10.5-foot gator on my first night out, and I was hooked. So every year I've put in for tags ever since then, and we go down and and it's a rodeo. It's a lot of fun.
So do you have any scars that a gator might have left?
No, there's a couple close calls.
One was just this most recent one where we thought the gator was dead. It was not dead, and I had the gator by the mouth at the time.
So that as I let it go, the mouth snaps open.
You know, that's funny. I saw that video and I thought, why is he doing that with a live gator? I didn't read the whole context there that was in the text you sent me, and I'm like, oh my God, he's freaking crazy. And then I showed it to a few people in here and everybody said, he's coming on the show? That dude's crazy.
Yeah, that's not really gator safety 101.
You want to make sure they're dead before you grab them by the mouth. But we hit them twice with a 44 mag bang stick, and that thing was still
alive. I mean, those.
So what is the process? Okay, you're gator hunting. What do you do exactly?
Well, so you can't really use.
I guess you can use bait. It's not something we do. You can't use a hook if you use bait. So what we do is we run up on them, and when you run up on them and kind of scare them, they'll drop straight down, and they'll sit at the bottom of the lake. It's a shallow lake.
Are you just on a boat?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Smaller boat, and Noonan's Lake is where we hunt. You're awarded tags. You put in and apply for tags based on the actual lake that you're going to hunt. So we always hunt Noonan's Lake down in Gainesville. And it's a shallow lake full of gators. You run up on these things. It's a mud bottom. So when they drop to the bottom to hide, it creates all these bubbles. So you can see it's almost like somebody opened a can of soda. Okay. And so you can see all these bubbles. You know there's a gator there. So then you pull out this big old treble hook on a little rope and start throwing it out there to try to snag it. And then we've also got treble hooks of the weight on a spinning rod, and you're trying to snag it. Once you hook up with that thing, hang on. Because now, especially if it's the hand line, you're essentially trying
a little fisherman boat.
Yeah, just a little center console, the little 19-footer. So
is he draining the boat?
Yes, they will pull the boat. If you get them near the shore, is all just swamp and cypress trees, and so you got to try to keep them out of the trees, and so it's a real process. And then they'll get worn down and they'll lay down, and then you try to get some more hooks in them to ensure that you don't lose them, because that skin is so tough that those hooks don't really always get embedded very well. And so you want to get multiple hooks in them. And then when you finally get them worn out, you get them up to the boat, and you've got a bang stick, which is a 44 Magnum pole discharge. And so when you hit it, it'll discharge and try to hit them right in the back of the head and sever the spine.
Okay.
But that didn't happen with this last gator.
I was the one with the bang stick too.
So you thought he was dead?
Yeah, because we put two 44 mags in his head, and he was kind of stunned, and so I reached in and grabbed him, and then the eyes came open, and gave me a little wink, and I thought, this is not good.
Is that when you throw him back down in the water?
Yeah, because my cousin's like, "Now we probably need to put another."
Better let him go.
Yeah,
right. He was still hooked, so
we threw him in, and then we got him kind of repositioned, and we put a third bullet in him.
So how does that work?
So when you had your hands around his mouth, because I saw the video, and you were cupping his mouth and his eyes open, and he winked at you. I mean, they've got some powerful jaws. So, I mean, they're stronger than your hands. The way you had your hands on his mouth, I mean, I'm sure that wasn't holding it shut.
Well, from what I understand, the jaws are really powerful to shut. So if they're reopen, they're not as powerful. So, but believe you me, I was squeezing as hard as I possibly could.
Hey, man, no, I'm not. I went on last time we were
down near New Orleans. We went on a gator, like a little boat tour, and we got to see tons of gators down in the swamp. It was actually for my birthday, either last year or the year before. I went with the kids and Kathleen, and great day.
Great day. It was fun, and it was definitely. I was like, I don't want to be. I don't want to have to be in that water, because there were hundreds of them.
Yeah. Yeah, when we go out there, we'll see hundreds of them. It's wild.
So what's that show that we can reference in here? Is it called Swamp? It's not Swamp Kings. It's Swamp.
Where they actually hunt gators on
Yeah.
the show. I've watched that show before. I found it kind of fascinating.
Yeah, they do it.
But I'm not going to do.
I think they actually use guns in that show.
They do.
And so that's a whole different process. And I think it depends lake to lake and probably state to state on how things are regulated. Maybe private property here in Florida, you can use guns. I'm not sure, but on Noonan's Lake, that's the way everybody does it. You'll see other gator hunters on the lake, and then you'll see them run up on a gator, and then you hear the big pop, and you know that they've.
Now, I guess you guys can hear each other kind of yelling. Right.
We try to keep a little distance, but yeah, from time to time you'll hear yelling. Sometimes you'll hear some celebration, and then you figure somebody's got a big one. So
Is that considered fishing or hunting?
That's a good question.
Your license, or do you just get a gator?
It's only
you just get
considered-
a number of bags, or how does that work?
It's only considered fishing and hunting if someone sees you.
I think it falls under the hunting category.
What does the license say?
I think it says actually, you might say gator trapping.
Mhm.
That's the rest.
And do they stock the lake in some way, or is it just that lake? Just you get
No,
X number
it
per
is
year?
just a perfect gator habitat because it's swamp all the way around. So there's about zero development because the shoreline you can't develop on it. It's just shallow cypress swampiness, and so it's a great habitat for them to thrive. And you have, there's hundreds, if not thousands, in that lake. So
What about harpoons? Could you?
yeah, we do use a harpoon. When they sit down and they're stubborn, you get a bigger one and you've got it hooked, but it's just sitting at the bottom of the lake and it doesn't want to come up, and you don't want to risk losing, the one hook that you have in them. Then you can start taking a harpoon to them, and that's another way to kind of secure.
I was going to ask you, we were talking about the boat club you're in, going out on the boat and everything, and I was actually going to see if I could hop on your boat one day, but I don't think I want to. I have a feeling we're going to end up in, I don't know, Brazilian waters, hunting some erotic gator that you've been hunting, for a decade, and you brought me along as bait. I don't know.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I gotcha. So, hey, we got to get into the last beer, and we want to jump back into AdTech. Before we do, is there anything else you want to embellish on your hobbies, fishing? I mean, what do you?
No, I'd say that, maybe the one other thing I'd recommend to anybody that loves fishing and wants a great experience is going over to Venice, Louisiana, and fishing the oil rigs. That's an incredible experience, and there's some really big yellow tuna, a lot of big sharks. Yeah, it's very, very tip of the boot there.
Okay. So not too far to drive. Cool.
Yeah. It's a incredible. They call it the fishing capital of the world when you're at the Venice Marina, but it's really incredible, and highly recommend it to anybody that's a fishing enthusiast and hasn't been over there.
Okay.
Cool. So, we've been having a nice conversation so far about gators, fish, bait, beers, and AdTech. Let's focus on the beers before we drink the last beer and then jump back into AdTech for a short stint. The beers that we've had today, let's talk about the beers we've had today. Let's talk about your favorite brews and the parallels of these in comparison to the beers you've had on your travel. So your travels abroad.
Yeah, so the beers we've had today, Dale's Pale Ale is kind of right in line with what I have really kind of gravitated towards the last couple of years. Similar to you, that IPAs are good for like one or two, but I kind of leaning towards the Pale Ales.
Yeah, we used to hang out together and we drank a lot of IPAs.
Yes.
And I think we didn't we? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, go ahead.
And for that reason, and I don't think the IPAs are very good for your waistline. It's like eating a loaf of sourdough every night. So I've gravitated towards the lighter beer, and especially in the summer months.
Pilsners and lagers are my go-to.
Yeah, I love a good Pilsner.
Yeah.
And then like the Hefeweizens and stuff like that, some of those European beers are really good. So
for the Weiss beers
Yeah.
from Germany.
Yeah. And then wintertime comes around, and I really like porters and stouts. But those are kind of like a pale ale or an IPA where you only want maybe one or two. I can't imagine drinking like more than 2 stouts. It's like literally 2 stouts for more than 2. So, and on the road when we were traveling, lagers were really kind of the staple beer. Every Latin American country and Southeast Asia, it seems like every country in the, I guess for lack of better terms, developing world has like their 2 or 3 national beers, kind of like their Bud Light, Miller Lite. And so we just usually stick to those, but there were some really, really good ones. Cusco had a great beer in Peru, Cusco Black, I believe. It was either Cusco Black or Cusco Dark, but it was kind of a stout and phenomenal beer. And it's tough to find here, but you go to a good liquor store that has a big beer selection, like a Total Wine or something like that. They might have it, and it's definitely worth checking out. That was one of my favorites.
So one of my reps with one of my favorite companies, Adtech, she's from Brazil. So if you ever need anything, any good beer brought back from Brazil, let me know, and I'm sure she'll do it.
They have one there called Antartica that's really good.
She's there, I think, every month. So
Really?
yeah. So
The cool thing about Brazil is they love extremely cold beer. And so every beer cooler has a thermometer, digital thermometer, to show you how cold it is. Cool. And then they serve them in like these 24 or 32 ounce bottles with little tiny cups, but they put them in like this koozie to make sure you're only drinking extremely cold beer. So you're just taking 1 or 2 drinks at a time, but you're pouring it from the bottle that's staying cold. And so you drink ice cold beer the entire time you're there.
You were saying when we're learning the language, can you still speak it? You still know it pretty well?
Portuguese, not so much. I became like conversational in Portuguese after the month there. Aaron and I actually took a trip over to Portugal a few years ago, and I kind of pulled some out of my rear end a little bit and made it work. But Spanish, I'm pretty close to fluent because I've got the degree in Spanish and spent several years in Latin America. Overall, so
it's about all.
Uno cerveza, por favor.
Yeah, that's right on the money.
Hey, there you go. I got it. So we're gonna let's hit the last beer. So this is a surprise beer. This takes me back about a decade to a time when me and Jeff were drinking some brews every Wednesday at a local restaurant called the Fish House. We would meet other tech guys there, kind of powwow, talk tech, and pound pints. And so is cracking a beer open as we speak. This next beer is a surprise beer that I brought on the show because it was kind of a milestone in our beer drinking from back then. And I vowed
never to drink it again. Now me and my wife will actually, sometimes buy it just to keep in the cooler, and we'll split
one glass as we play darts because it's a really good beer. The problem is it's a very high alcohol content. We'll find out. And Jeff, I know you remember the Golden Monkey.
I can't believe you brought the Golden Monkey.
The Golden Monkey is here today, buddy, and that's what's in your last glass. So
I vividly remember the monkey. I don't remember our night drinking the monkey very well.
Yeah, no, I don't either. And until I got home and didn't have my credit card and lost my Ray-Bans. So, and that's a whole other story that I'm not going to get into on this show. But
take it away.
All right, this is the Victory Brewing Company out of Pennsylvania, the Golden Monkey Belgian Triple. It's loaded with Belgian yeast, character of banana and clove, with an equally fruity body balanced with a light earthy hop character. Savor notes of orange and spice, followed by a dry finish. 9.5% ABV.
So it's a dry finish.
Mm-hmm. See, that's just it about these IPAs. They can be
not going to warm
at 4%, and then they can be 9%.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what the ABV is, they can sneak up on you real quick.
And we didn't when we first bought the Golden Monkey. I remember that. You're like, hey, there's this new beer. I just tried it. You'll like this one. This one tastes good. And after we pounded 3 or 4 pints of it, not knowing the alcohol content, I think we all blacked out. I don't know what happened.
It was not our average happy hour.
Yeah, no. And those never end well. So let's cap off today's show by finishing this beer and talking about the future of AdTech. Where's it going, Jeff?
That's a really good question. I think there's a lot of exciting things to come in AdTech. I think the digital media world in general is going to have a lot of challenges, like we mentioned, with all these different medias and distribution channels.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's going to go to video. I think a lot of it's going to go short form. AI is going to be a large contributor, and there's also the AR and VR element. I mean, you've got the Metaverse, you've got virtual reality really starting to emerge. AR could be a thing. So, when you're putting on your AR glasses and doing your work through your glasses instead of a computer screen, people are going to figure out ways to serve ads and make money. Serve AIDS, my God.
He hasn't even
Finish the whole slurred words. Yeah, so it's going to be very, very interesting. There's a lot of creativity within the ad tech space. We were talking to a company out of Tel Aviv that runs ads inside video games, and there's a lot of money just in that, and it's a programmatic space. So there's an auction going on to serve an ad inside a video game. That's fascinating
about it. Now, I know Zuckerberg has kind of pulled back on his big commitment a little bit to virtual reality, but it's still there, and it's only going to come to fruition. I remember the first AI goggles I put on, they sucked. I mean, everything was pixelated. It's come a long way. It's still got a long way to go. And I guess my question is, his vision of the world is everybody sitting around with, it's sad, but I'm sorry, that's my take on it, sitting around with goggles on and basically interacting with each other at a virtual bar, which happens now. You just swipe right or left, right? I don't do that, but you read about it. I would rather go out and socialize. I'd rather not have the head down mentality that we have today, but it is a reality. So as opposed to head down, the head down mentality, you're going to have a full virtual experience reality someday in the future. I think it's coming. How do ads and how does ad tech, that I can only imagine the opportunity there for those ads to be on every billboard, every piece of furniture, every whatever in those virtual spaces.
Yeah, there's probably going to be a lot of creative folks to figure out ways to, right now we look at ads, display ads, and it's just a creative, there's a picture of a chainsaw or a pair of shoes or, a good looking gal or whatever it is that tries to draw our attention, right? And
right.
I think with this virtual reality thing, there's going to be these fully immersive ad experiences that drive extreme engagement and are, almost in a way that you don't even realize that you're engaging with an ad. It's more of an experience. And there's a lot of brain power behind figuring out ways to kind of natively inject ads and get the user to engage in it without feeling like they're being served an ad. And virtual reality is going to be a medium that allows that to happen in really creative and probably, incredible ways that may or may not be good for the human psyche. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. So
I have very well knowledge
Fields particular, and I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be throwing on VR glasses. What it is going to be is AR, like you're saying. So it's going to be
you're throwing on, let's say, just lens, like you're just wearing normal glasses, reading glasses, right? But they happen to pop stuff up on the screen. Feeding you digital stuff as you're experiencing the world, not secluding you from the world. That's where, like,
interacting with the world in an augmented way as opposed to just blocking out the world around you and jumping into a virtual world. I think they're going to coexist.
Yes.
That's my thought on it.
I think it's what's going to
going to be two different markets. I think it's going to depend on the user. And I think the augmented way, what Microsoft has done with HoloLens is unreal in terms of what you can do in engineering and design and things like that, as opposed to Zuckerberg's fun little pet project of jumping into a fully immersive world. So it's two different worlds. We're going to cap the show off with some curated questions for Jeff. Don't look at my screen. I don't want you to know the questions, but I do want you guys to down your beers before we ask these questions, if you don't mind. And we're going to jump into it. So Jeff, if you had a time machine, but could only use it one time, so you won't be able to come back, you won't be able to go to anywhere else. You can only use it once. Where and when would you go?
Can't come back.
Yes, and we can't have dead space on this show, so you need to answer right now.
All right. I'm going. I think I would go probably back to about 2001 and get into the ad tech space before the ad tech space really took off, because the guys that got in early and started, especially like some of these content art guys, they were making insane margins, insane money. There's a lot of companies that really hit it big, and having an understanding of how big and important the internet and the digital media space would be in 2001 would certainly be a life changer today.
Cool. Suds, I'm going to direct that same question at you. I'm going to take you by surprise, because he's usually a man of very few words. If you had a time machine but could only use it once, where and when would you go?
So I'd still be this age. I'd still be in the 40s. Like I'd just be traveling back in time.
Yes, you're South Park.
I would probably go.
What is he talking about?
Well, you're talking about going back in time. I would probably go back.
Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, he's a man of very few words. We took him off guard with this. He's off camera for a reason. Go ahead, Suds.
All right, I'd probably go back early 80s, mid 80s to experience that time. I definitely wouldn't want to go back too far where I have to farm or do something like that. So I'm not going back to the Middle Ages or something. I'd want to be, I think the early 80s.
So you want to go back
As an adult and not like a little child.
So I knew Suds back then. So you want to go back to wearing those parachute pants that you love so much?
Hammer time.
That was the 90s, right? Yeah.
I'm kidding.
80s were those short shorts.
No,
Shorts are going shorts.
He had the gold monkey. That's why he's actually talking.
What are you doing in the 80s? Why?
It's a fun time for
Hey,
people, not
hot
me.
pink. I had a pair of hot pink shorts. Jimmy Z. My shirt. I had this ripped up shirt that I wore all the time. And my Vans were my precious one pair of Vans that I mail ordered and only took 8 weeks to come in because you had to fill out a form. And I swear to God, I order all my Vans. I have a whole closet of Vans now. I order them online. I custom order them and have them specially made.
From the time around the Lightning's Vans, I got some donuts.
1985 or 86, I ordered my first pair of Vans, and I had to fill a form out and mail it in, and I waited by the mailbox every day up till my Vans would arrive.
And it's
Hot
just,
pink,
you can't go
hot
back.
pink with palm trees on one side. It was black and white checkerboard on the sides, hot pink and white in the front, and I wore holes in 3 of the toes, skateboarding and BMXing, and that was my life. So,
A lot of neon colors in the 80s.
yeah, we loved them. We need to go back to that, man. Come on. Now, parachute pants I never wore. But,
Those don't need to come back.
yeah, they don't need to come back. The big hair, no, that doesn't need to come back.
Yeah.
There's a big joke about that. It was, every girl back then had a can of Aquanet on their dresser. So, Jeff, your travels abroad, what's the best beer you've had overseas?
Before you answer, sorry, I'm going to cut in. If I had to travel back in time just so I had to have an answer here, I'm easily going back and buying about 1,000 Bitcoin.
That's not a bad answer.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer.
That's a really
I am solid, even at just 1,000. Think how much was it? 80 grand right now, something like that.
Yeah, you don't have
Just
to go
for 10 to 1. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean,
15 years or so.
anyway, that's
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't ask you.
No, it's cool, but that is definitely the definitive answer there. Think how much money I have. Anyway, continue.
You know what? We're all going back in the past. Nobody said the future because it's unpredictable.
Yeah.
We all went back in the past. Me personally, I would go back in the past with all the knowledge that I've gained in my 53 years. Yes, I'm that old. 53 years of being on this earth. When I was a teenager in my 20s, I knew nothing. I knew nothing. I mean, I knew nothing. And if I could take all the wisdom I knew now and go back, I'd definitely be wealthy. And, you know, I wouldn't have had to work as hard, but I think to a degree, I would miss that because I wake up in the middle of the night with ideas and I scribble them down, and I don't think that's ever going to stop. I don't care how old I am. And, but going back with the wisdom and being a little smarter and making a few better choices, like not drinking the Golden Monkey, I think I would have been like, no, we don't need to drink that. You're going to want to order. Well, why not? Well, because I went back in time and this is not what you want to drink. So,
Sorry, that's the
best beer you've tasted overseas.
I put that Cusco Black up there, and definitely be one of them.
And where's that from again?
Peru.
Okay.
That's a really good beer.
Everybody go to Peru and drink the Cusco Black.
My favorite beer is that sour version of the Golden Monkey. Instead of Golden Monkey, it's Sour Monkey. If you haven't had it, you should have it.
Yeah, I never tried that.
You told me the other day your favorite beer was Stella.
No, I'm saying if I go to a bar and I'm picking what they would have on draft, they usually will have a Stella, and that's what I'm picking. In terms of like, nobody would be there.
And Such, your favorite beer is a box of wine?
What?
See what the Golden Monkey does, folks. So I have one final question for you, Jeff. And this is a big one. Don't look at my screen. You can't prep yourself for my question. I need you to think. I need you to clear your mind and think. And I want you to explain AdTech to someone from the 16th century. How would you describe it? Now, you explained it to us with all these great terms that we're already aware of in today's world of advertising and world of tech and AI. But they're not going to know what AI is. They're not going to know what tech is. They're not going to know. I mean, they used tech back then. It was just a different style, a medieval tech. Explain tech. Explain AdTech to someone in the 16th century.
Good luck.
I would probably tell them, imagine walking outside and every horse carriage that goes by has a advertisement for a business that's catered exactly to your interests.
Okay.
That's how AdTech operates.
All right, let's lock him up and use his knowledge.
That's not a bad answer, right?
That's a great
answer. Store, you know, hey, Jaws General. That's going to be right there on the side.
Jeff, thank you so much for sharing your captivating journey, both abroad, personally, and professionally. I love hearing about AdTech. I've learned a lot today. I love hearing about how you kill a gator or don't kill a gator and hold his mouth and realize he's awake. So I appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right.
A lot of fun.
I think we should run down to the store and grab another 6-pack of the monkey.
I'm in.
All right.
You guys are in line.
Thanks, folks. Thanks for joining Nerds on Tap. Thanks for coming in and watching us today. Another thanks to Jeff Deren for being on the show and telling us about AdTech and what it brings to you and what it's going to do in the future, and talking about Assertive Yield and the company that he's with. We really appreciate it. Forward to the next show. I hope you look forward to the next show of Nerds on Tap. This is only episode 3. Subscribe now because this show is going to be on your radar as we grow. Bring it.
Later.
Cheers, my fellow nerds and beer lovers. Stay tuned for more Nerds on Tap. Oh, and one more thing. Help us spread the nerdy love and the love for great brews by sharing this podcast with your friends, colleagues, and fellow beer enthusiasts. Let's build a community that embraces curiosity, innovation, and the enjoyment of a cold one.